There we go. Let me see. All right. Time to get started, man. First and foremost, I'm going to say, call halal Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. That's all praise to the Most High God in the name of his only begotten Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, man. And I also want to say, like, share, subscribe, super chat. Just support the troops, man. There's a lot of Israelites here not supporting troops. Support the troops, man. Like, a like goes a long way. It helps us in the algorithm. Sharing it helps us in the algorithm. All these things help us in the algorithm so we can reach more people and get these videos out so we can be saved, man. But here we are again, yet again. And for the last time, that's why I call this video Refrain from These Men, the Scoffer'S last hurrah, because this is the last time I'm going to deal with or make mention of this scoffer in particular. It's at this point it's just ridiculous to keep dealing with it. But I want to deal with this video in particular because this in Hebrews, Acts 15 and Amos 9 is really begun to be the new Israelite John 3:16 for the raccoons of our people. I've said it like that. The raccoons of our people, they like to use the scriptures to. Slack here. What's up? Oh, I did already. What was I gonna say? For the raccoons of our people like to use the scriptures to try to save the heathens. And I wanted to go into that. And I wanted to go into some lies that was said on me and addressing the lies that he said I did, right? So let's just jump into it. Actually, before we do that, I want to get this. Real fast. Because the thing is, these people, and this brother in particular, are really Christians. At the end of the day, they believe in the same exact thing the Christian church propagates. They believe in the same, essentially, if they want to say Christ is a black man, that's fine. But y'all hold to you in particular, hold to the ideologies of white Christ. And it shows when you say things like you don't have to keep the law, everybody can be saved, the heathen only have to do certain things, which is the same thing the Christian church says. The same exact thing. You're a Christian. And I'm saying this to you and to all the Christians and to the Christianized Hebrew Israelites. Why don't y'all hold to Acts chapter 5, verse 38? Why don't y'all ever do that? It's like y'all always have to make this YouTube channel. You go for a little minute. You go for a little minute posting some videos talking mess about the one West Israelites. They said the one West Israelites. And you end up getting 100 subs, 20 views here, 30 views there, 20 views there. Nobody cares. Nobody's watching it. And ultimately, it gets to the point to where you realize what you're doing is fruitless and you're fighting against God. So instead of keep combating you and sitting here trying to do with the things you say, I'm just going to make this video and I'm going to be done because you're finished. Like this everything, all the topics we're going to talk about right here is finishing you, like completely. And I'm going to hold to what Acts chapter 5 says. I'm going to read it. And it says, and now I say unto you, refrain from these men and let them alone. For if this counsel or work be of men, it will come to naught. And that same thing I ask Christians. Why don't y'all do this? Why don't y'all keep this? Y'all never do that. Ever. Like it's always got to come up. You got to come up with some. You got to make a YouTube channel and then make a video saying you confounded us. Act like you have an audience when you really don't, and just do this ultimately for your own vainglory. Because you're not doing like you think the Lord is just pleased with you making a video. Go, oh, SICARRI debunked. Why don't you preach the gospel? If that's the case, why do I always see you trying to make a rebuke video, which really doesn't even show that we got rebuked? If you have spiritual eyes and actually know something, why don't you hold to this? Why don't you hold to this? I'm gonna read it again. It says, and now I say unto you, refrain from these men and let them alone. For if this counsel or work be of men, it will come to naught. It will come to nothing. It will die off. That's why I'm going to keep this. That's why I'm not going to continue to deal with this man after this. Because it's just like, this is pointless. I'm not going to continue to debate with somebody who can't even hold their own words accountable. I'm gonna read verse 39. And it said, but if it be of God, ye cannot overthrow it, lest happily ye be found to even to fight against God. And that's what ultimately what they're doing when they try to come up against us, man. We're here coming out the scriptures, holding what we say accountable, unlike them, holding what we say accountable and teaching the authenticity of the scriptures. The heathens cannot be saved. There's nothing they can do to get this salvation. And Israel's going to take the kingdom and possess it forever and ever and ever. And when the scriptures talk about us possessing Esau, that doesn't mean they're going to come and then they're going to be fellow heirs with us. It means we're going to possess them for handmaids and servants, like the scripture says. That's the authenticity of the scriptures. We don't just read that as, oh, let's go to John 3:16 and say it's talking about something else. No, the scriptures say what they say, and we're going to go into it. And we're going to react to this video and see how stupid you look, right? Because that's really what it boils down to. You just look dumb. Just dumb as hell. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get this.
I'm running to a verse that you're comfortable with. Just go ahead, read the verse. I know you're comfortable with it. Then go ahead. Go ahead, read the verse. I know you're comfortable with it. Then go ahead. Go ahead, read the verse. I know you're comfortable.
You see the pride. You see, I know you're gonna cut me. Like I'm not afraid of wherever you're gonna go. I've been dealing with Christians for 6 years.
Just go ahead. You're gonna end up looking silly anyway, like you do now, because you don't know how to deal with things like that. You don't know how to deal. Because he later here in the video, he talks about dealing with the volume of the scriptures. That's like when you look at the word volume, it's like something like all the space contained.
And look at this, right? Check this out. Now, being an adult, we went through this thing called elementary, right? And in elementary, they have this thing called vocabulary words. And one of those vocabulary words was ramble or rambling. Now, I'm talking to a lot of to people who are adults. I'm talking to a lot of adults right now. Everybody went through elementary, right? Now, when you look at the word ramble, is this how you spell it? Here's a quick question. Is this how you spell rambling? Like this should let you know everything you should know that you need to know about this person. You can't even spell the word rambling correctly. You can't even do it, bro. Like this is what I'm saying. This is why I leave people like this alone, because you don't even have just the basic level or literacy. Like if you're illiterate with the English language, I'm not even about to deal with you with the Bible, bro. Like this is madness.
Thing, just like how you deal with all the scriptures, like how even us at the SICARRI deal with the entirety of the Bible, not just one specific passage.
He says I'm about to make a huge mistake. I'm about to make a huge mistake. Wow. Okay, let's go.
Go to Acts 15. I don't know why it doesn't really prove their point, because when you start adding other scriptures in, that doesn't make sense. What is it? Acts 15. Circumcision. Where does it say disdain from idols? Yeah. Is it NLT? Oh, that's why I didn't know it's NLT.
Let me see. Let's skip that. Okay, right here.
15:19. Yes, Acts 15:19. For my sentences that we trouble not them, which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. What does that mean? That we trouble not them, which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. What does that mean? I was talking about the Israelites who just now finding their Israel, just like finding out their Israel, just like how you see in 1 Corinthians chapter.
Family. These camps.
Now you see how disingenuous this is. You see how disingenuous this is, right? Now, I gave an example of what I said. He says he's about to say I'm a liar and I'm disillusioned for saying that these Gentiles right here are talking about the Israelites who just found out they were Israel. Now he cuts me off right before I say the verse that goes with what my point is. Goes with my point. I literally give it. I say what I said and then give an example. And before you can even hear my example, he cuts it off to say I'm delusional. Like that's disingenuous. Like that's the people we're talking about. It's just a smear campaign. These guys are agents of Satan.
Are so delusional and liars. He went to Acts 15:19. Pay close attention. These guys are deceivers and manipulators. He went to Acts 15:19 to say the Gentiles in 15:19 are Israelites. Family, this is madness.
Now he said that's madness. He says I'm a liar and that's madness, right? Now I'm going to read a few precepts and then we're going to come back to this because he doesn't believe that those are Israelites. He believes those are natural Gentiles. He believes those are other nations, really the Edomites, because that's who he wants to save in the first place. So I'm gonna read a few scriptures and then we're gonna jump back with that, with the understanding of the scriptures I'm gonna bring out. We're gonna jump back to this context and see, does that make sense before we even go into who that is. Let me get this really fast in Acts 4 because I want to set a precedent. Right, this is Acts 4:12. It says, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. So ultimately, we need, because this in context talking about Christ. You see it right here in verse 10. Now, ultimately, for us to receive this salvation or have the ability to have that bridge between us or that mediator, like how Christ is, to make it to the Most High, we have to believe in Christ. No other name under heaven shall we be saved by. Now, watch this. If that is the case, let's go look at the scriptures talking about Christ. Because if that's the only way we're going to get it, let's go to the scriptures talking about Christ. Let's just see. Let's just see something. Let's go to Luke. Let's go to Israelite 101. I wanted to set that precedent because when we start looking at all these scriptures and we see that you can only get this through Christ, and you see only the Israelites getting this through Christ, you can obviously tell by context and by hermeneutics that you can see those Gentiles right there in Acts chapter 15 are Israelites, unless the Bible is contradicting itself. Every time these people who believe contrary to what we believe, every time they introduce something that's supposed to be contrary to what we believe, it always makes the Bible contradict itself. So let's look at some scriptures and see if there's a contradiction. This is Luke chapter 1, verse 67. And saying, his father Zacharias was filled with the Holy Ghost and prophesied, saying, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people. The God of Israel has visited and redeemed his people. Who's that Redeemer? Christ. And it's going to prove it with the context. Verse 69. And he hath raised up an horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. For us, possessive. Horn of salvation for us, the people of Israel, the people who he's redeemed. Verse 70. As he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began. Why? Because the prophets said the same thing. The prophet said salvation is only for Israel. Isaiah does it. Jeremiah does it. All these prophets do it when they talk about the gospel, because in the gospel you see Israel being stratified compared to the other nations. You see that all through what they call the Old Testament. I'm gonna keep going. Verse 71. That we should be saved from our enemies. That we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. That we should be saved from our enemies. Now, when we're saved from our enemies, that means one person is being saved and the enemies are not being saved. So let's see who the enemies are. Let's go to this real quick. Because these are like basic scriptures, but like sometimes the milk is good enough, bro. Just to be honest, the milk is good enough. Let me see. I'm gonna skip around. This is Psalms 83:1. Is keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies, his enemies, who's the Lord's enemies? The same enemies that Israel's are. For lo, thine enemies make, and matter of fact, it says it with the context. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Verse 4. How do they do that? That they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And how do they do that? Through Christianity, through Hebrew Israelite Christianity, like these guys believe in. These ideologies that you don't have to keep the law, our heritage, our culture. It doesn't matter who you are, you can be saved. That's how you diminish That's how you diminish who Israel is. That's anti-Semitic, literally. When you bring Israel down to the heathen, or try to exalt them up to where Israel is, you make Israel not holy no more. They're not set apart. They're not different from everybody else. And when you do that, it doesn't matter who the Israelites are. So now somebody can rise up in their stead. And who do we see doing that? The Amalekites. Like you see what I mean? Like, it's like stuff like this is so dangerous and so evil. It's so evil to say that anybody can be saved. It's so evil to say it doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to keep the law. All these doctrines are straight just murderous. Like, you're a murderer, because the wages of sin are death. So you're telling the people it's okay to sin, or the Mosaic law, that carnal Mosaic law is done away with. You're a murderer because you're getting them killed. And that's getting counted towards you, bro. Like, people don't understand how wicked they actually are through the doctrines that they propagate. But I'm gonna keep going because it's talking about the enemies. Verse 5: for they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. Who's the first one? The tabernacles of Edom. The first one, the tabernacles of Edom. Who's the Edomites? The Europeans, the Ishmaelites, Arabs, Moabites, Hagarenes, Gabal, and it damn near names all the nations. Damn near. It doesn't literally do it, but damn near. All of them are enemies unto us because they put us in captivity and have put us in captivity. Right now, currently, we're in the Edomite captivity. We're in a Edomite captivity. They just say it like that, right? The Ishmaelites had us in captivity, the sub-Saharan slave trade. The Moabites had us in captivity, I believe, in Judges. I believe it's Judges or Joshua. I gotta look at it. I forgot. But and the Hagarenes, I think that's going into. Let me see who that is specifically. So I think that's Canaanites or Philistines. I forgot which one. But that's irrelevant. The point is, all these nations are our enemies, and we need to be saved from them. That's what Luke chapter 1 says. And let's go back to it, because here's the thing. His main point that he likes to say is also what the Christians say. They go to Genesis 12 and say, oh, if you bless Israel, then you'll be blessed. No nation has blessed us. And not just one person, no nation, not one person of that nation, no whole nation has blessed us. The Edomites sure haven't blessed us, for sure. That's the main people we're trying to save. They don't bless us at all. We're in captivity to them. So they're going to go into captivity because they put us into captivity. But in context of the pericope we're talking about right here in Luke chapter 1, verse 70, I'm going to read it again. And it says, as he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies. We already went through who our enemies are. That's Psalms 83. And it's pretty much all the nations. They're all going to put us in captivity, because as long as we break the commandments of God, we are going to be the tail, and everybody else is going to be the head. So everybody else is going to be our enemies. We need to be saved from them. That's why it says we should be saved from them. And Christ is going to do that. I'm going to keep going. To perform the mercy promised to our fathers. What is that? To remember his holy covenant, the oath which he swore to our father Abraham. This is the fulfillment of the Abrahamic promise, that Christ will come and save us from that. So how then can salvation be for everybody? And if it's not for everybody, according to these two chapters, then those Gentiles who have turned to God cannot be natural born Gentiles. They have to be Israelites. And there's more. We're gonna go even deeper into it. There's more, right? Verse 74, that he will grant unto us that we, being delivered out of the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear. Who's those going to serve God? Who's turn to God? The Israelites. We're going to serve him without fear. And it says, in holiness and in righteousness before him all the days of our life. Christ is going to do that. Christ is a redeemer for us to save us from all that. Like this, it's things like this that you can't even really you can't even get out of. You can't get out of things like this. Just basic stuff like basic Luke chapter 1. You can't get out of this. There's no running from this. There's no, what about this eating my head? No. All the nations have put us into captivity and shall go into captivity, like the Bible says. Now let's get this. Let's get another one. We need to keep Acts chapter 4, verse 10, chapter 4 and verse 12 in our heads, though, because this comes through Christ. Christ is the only name that we're going to be saved by. Let's get more precepts. Let's go to Isaiah. I always go to these because it's imperative. It's imperative that you understand and go precept upon precept to get your understanding on things and build points off of that. Build precepts that go together and make the Bible not contradict itself like these people do. Because he'll jump back to Galatians 3. He'll go to all these things talking about the word, like when you see the word Gentiles, they just do like how Christians do, just substitute in all other nations right there. And the thing is, that the word Gentile isn't exclusive to non-Israelites. And there's places in the Bible where we call Israelites by other nations, which we're going to get later. But I digress. Let's get this. This is Isaiah 59, verse 20. It says, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion, and unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob, saith Yahweh. As for me, who's that Redeemer? We just saw that in Luke chapter 1. That's Christ. It shall come to Zion, not everybody else. It says, and unto them that turn from transgression in Jacob. That's in Israel. That's Israelites. It's very simple. Saith the Lord. As for me, this is my covenant with them, saith the Lord, my spirit that is upon thee, and my words which let me read that again. My spirit that is upon thee, and my words which I have put in thy mouth shall not depart out of thy mouth. But that's all the part I want to get right here. Let's jump to Romans chapter 11. Because Paul is saying the same thing as Isaiah chapter 59. Which lets you know, because we all know the famous Christian strong point is the grafting in process. Romans 11 is the grafting in process. Now, Paul sums up the entire grafting in process in verse 26. This is Romans 11, verse 26. So all Israel shall be saved. That's what this is talking about. So all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, there shall come out of Zion, Zion in the Hebrew, the deliverer or redeemer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this is my covenant unto them when I shall take away their sins. Now you see this. You see what was said in Isaiah chapter 59, where it's talking about specifically the Israelites unto thy seed, because it says that verbatim. There's no spiritual Israelites in this. I'm reading verse 21 again, Isaiah 59, 21, and we're going to jump back. And it says, as for me, this is my covenant with them, those in Jacob, saith the Lord, my spirit is upon thee, and my words which I have put in thy mouth shall not depart out of thy mouth, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, nor out of the mouth of thy seed, saith Yahweh, from henceforth and forever. That's bloodline descendancy. Verbatim. That's who that's talking to. And now you see in the New Testament, Paul talks about the Israelites that need to be grafted back in. Those branches that broke off from the tree, they were originally a part of that tree. What's that tree? What's specifically that tree? Jacob. Really Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but Jacob specifically. The Israelites that need to be grafted back in. The people who went off. They need to be covered for their transgressions of what they did. Just like in the Maccabean captivity, how we stopped circumcising our children, or what happened in Ezra and Nehemiah time. They all need to be grafted back in through their unbelief and through their wicked works. That's why they were alienated. Let me get this real fast. Yeah, Colossians 1 verse 21 is, and you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled. Our people, who is he talking to? The Colossians right here. the Israelites who were in Colossae. And you see that in Acts. It's not something I'm just adding. You see that in Acts when he talks about the Jews that are in Colossae. The Israelites who went through the Maccabean captivity. Well, not really Maccabean. I want to say the Greek captivity that you find in the book of Maccabees. They stopped circumcising their children. They stopped keeping the laws of God. They gave up their culture to make themselves just like the Gentiles, like it says in 2 Maccabees. And since Christ died for them, now they're reconciled back into the fold again so that all Israel can be saved. But this is only for Israel. That's the thing. That's what, and the whole reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you read in Colossians or Romans, it's calling the people, the audience who Paul's writing to, Gentiles. And if we know the prophecies and we know what Paul said himself, and you saw what he was quoting in the in what they call the OT, you can tell who these Gentiles are. They have to be Israelites, and if they're not, the Bible's contradicting itself. That's the problem, bro. What's it? Is that Athapender? I don't know what that means, but it says everybody wants to be us. Everybody wants to be us. Everybody wants to be us because we have the blessings and the promises. That's why the Christian want to do. They're jealous of us, man. They confederate against us to take our promises, so that they can be at the height of the hill. Because as long as we don't do what we're supposed to be doing, they get to continue to remain in power. And when you preach things like this guy preaches, you allow them to remain in power. You love captivity. At the end of the day, when you try to save an Edomite or save a Moabite or an Ammonite, you love captivity. You love being in here, and you love your oppressor. Where was I going back to? Romans 11. But the point I wanted to make right here, if you put all his precepts together, you see who he's talking to. And when you see who he's talking to, he refers to them as Gentiles. Paul refers to them as Gentiles, and we see all the stuff he's referring to Israelites. He's pointing and pulling out precepts to apply them to these people who are called Gentiles, who actually are Israelites. And if they're not, the Bible's contradicting itself. Let me get Acts. No, we don't need Acts. Let's get Hebrews 9. In Hebrews 9, it says, and for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament. Who's the he? That's talking about Christ. That's contextually. He's talking about Christ, right? So I'm going to read it again. And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament. So here's the thing. This person who's a mediator, which is Christ, only died for the transgressions that were under the first testament. Who was under the first testament? Israel. Now, if we see this is the only person who's going to be the mediator to bring us to God, and you see he's only dying for the people under the first testament, what does that mean? That means Christ only died for Israel. That means the only people who can turn to God are Israelites. Plain and simple. It's plain and simple, bro. But let's get this, just to prove it. Because here at the SICARRI, we prove we show our work, man. We show our work, man. You know, like when you're in school, they say, yeah, that's the right answer, but can you show your work? Let's get this. And the thing is, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that first testament, because they'll say, well, no, it wasn't just Israel who came out of Egypt. You're right. There was a mixed multitude. But who got the blood sprinkled upon them? Do you see the mixed multitude getting blood sprinkled upon them, or do you see Israel getting the blood sprinkled upon them to enjoin them into the covenants? Let's see. This is Exodus chapter 24, verse 3. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which Yahweh has said, we will do. Verse 4, and Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and builded an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Where's the mixed multitude? Oh, I know. The mixed multitude died. They fell a lusting in Numbers chapter 11. They're dead. So now you see all the people right here are Israelites. And even if you want to say that happened after this, why do you only see Israel? Why do you see Moses making the 12 pillars just for Israel? Where's 12 pillars for all the tribes of Israel, and then here's a pillar for all the other nations? You don't see that. That don't work with the context. Verse 5, and he said, young men and the children, hold up. And he sent young men of the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings of oxen unto Yahweh. And Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he sprinkled on the altar. And he took the book of the covenant, which we all agreed to, and read it in the audience of the people. And they said, all the words of Yahweh, all that Yahweh has said, we will do and be obedient. Here it is, the point. And Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant or the testament, the first testament, behold, the blood of the covenant or testament, which Yahweh hath made with you concerning all these words. This is who the first covenant was for, the Israelites. This is who received it, the Israelites, because the blood was sprinkled upon them. That's who was under the first testament. So when you go to Hebrews chapter 9, that's who Christ died for. So how then can the Gentiles in Acts 15 that turn themselves to God be anybody else other than Israel? Unless you got a contradiction in Hebrews 9, you got a contradiction in Hebrews 24. Damn near the whole Bible, to be honest. Let's just say that. The whole Bible, the whole book. You see what I mean? Like precept upon precept, you get the understanding. In context. Slack you, because people like use, we can't do this keyword. Like that's a whole nother topic. I'm gonna stay on topic. But to double down on what I said and to prove what I said, when you go down in context, it says verse 19. It says Hebrews 9 and 19. This is for when Moses has spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, as we just read in Exodus chapter 24. He took the blood of the calves and of goats and with water, with scarlet wool and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book and all the people, saying, this is the blood of the testament. The blood of the testament or covenant is interchangeable, which God hath enjoined unto you. Who is that? That's Israel. Christ died for his people who had the blood, the blood sprinkled upon them and who have been enjoined into the covenant. That's who Christ died for. He died for those transgressions. It's very simple, bro. This is one of those things where like you have to be literally. Now I don't want to say that because YouTube is clamping down on that. I can't say nothing no more, man. You have to be biblically illiterate, and this guy's also actually illiterate because you can't even spell the word rambling. He spelled rabbling. A rabble is a confused crowd. That's a whole nother word. Like this is what I'm talking about. It's stuff like this is what I'm talking about. So I'm reading verse 15 again, and we're gonna get some more precepts. It says Hebrews 9 and 15. It says, for this cause he is a mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. Who's called? Who are the people who are called? That's Isaiah 44, the Israelites. Jacob has been called. Israel has been called. Nobody else has been called. So I know they're going to go to Acts chapter 15 and say, oh, the heathen called by my name. But what you got to understand is the heathen have never, ever been called by the Lord's name. And you can't go in the scriptures and find that, bro. Because it's not there. It don't exist. It don't. And we're gonna get that later too. Don't like I got a whole lesson prepared. I got a whole lesson prepared, right? So We see Christ only dying for the people who were under the first testament, those people who were under the law. Let's get Galatians 4. We hosting a clinic right now. This is Galatians 4 verse 4. It says, but when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law or the first testament, to redeem them that were under the law. Who was under the law? Israel. Who was the law enjoined unto? Who was the covenant enjoined unto? Israel. That we, the same people who he's talking to, same people he's talking to, that we might receive the adoption of sons. Now, when it says we, that's talking about me and you. Paul, we know Paul's an Israelite who was born under the law, and we see he's talking to the Galatians. So if the Galatians, and what he's saying is we is like we both, me and you both, can use Christ's death as an application, which means what? The people he's talking to are Israelites because they had to be under the law so that they can be redeemed. Like this is things like this. It's stuff like this that proves how Israelites can be called another nation. Because if that's not the case, now you got a contradiction. Like it's things like that. Let me get another one. I gotta go into the Apocrypha for this one. Esther 10, verse 4. I think it's verse 9, actually. I hope this ain't Spanish. This looks like Wrigley. Okay. I don't like how this looks. KJV. This is 10. KJV. Where's the context? Okay. All right. This is addition to Esther chapter 10, verse 9. And it says, and my nation is this Israel, which cried to God and were saved. Which when we're saved, for Yahweh have saved his people, and Yahweh have delivered us from all those evils. And God hath wrought signs and great wonders, which have not been done among the Gentiles. They have not been done among the Gentiles. All the things the Lord has done to us, he hasn't dealt so with any other nation, whether it be as far as showing his word or as far as the miracles. He hasn't dealt so with any other nation, only us. And it gets worse. Verse 10. Therefore hath he made God, therefore have he made two lots, one for the people of God and another for all the Gentiles. And these two lots came at the hour and time and day of judgment before God among all nations. Watch this, the day of judgment. So God remembered his people and justified his inheritance. What happened to the Gentiles? They didn't get justified. Justification is not for the other nations. Christ did not die for the other nations. And if he's the only person who's going to make it available for you to have mediation between you and God, and we know he didn't die for the other nations, that means the Gentiles have nothing to do with Christ. They have nothing to do with the Lord. And those Gentiles in Acts chapter 15 cannot be natural blood Gentiles unless we have a contradiction. That's how I came to the conclusion that those Gentiles are Israelites in that context. And it wouldn't be far-fetched. It wouldn't be far-fetched to believe in that, because you see in Acts, let's go to Acts 2. It wouldn't be far-fetched to believe that Israelites are called other nations because you've seen it in the scriptures. This is Acts 2 verse 5, and I'm gonna jump down. It says Acts 2 and 5, it says, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, that's their nationality. They're Jews. Now, what is it going to call them? Parthians, Medes, Elamites, dwell in Mesopotamia and in Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, Asia, Phrygia, Pamphylia, and in Egypt, and in parts of Libya, about Cyrene, strangers of Rome. This is where you get the Jews who are in Rome, like the epistle to the Romans, and Jews and proselytes, Cretes, Arabians. We do hear them speak in our tongues the wonderful works of God. So why is it calling them that? It's not a far-fetched thing to call Israelites another nation if they were born in that land and they're walking in that culture. It's not a far-fetched thing to say. You see that here, and you see that in 1 Corinthians 10, because he cut me off before I could even say it. He cut me off just to be fully disingenuous. He cut me off before I can even say it, which cuts his whole ideology to saying, "Oh, this guy's are liars, they're delusional." How am I delusional if I see this in context and I can apply it to my understanding? You can't do that. You just say, "Up is Gentiles," as far as up is non-Israelites, off a misunderstanding of Amos 9, which we're going to get. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1. It says, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea." What is that in reference to? The Exodus. "And were all baptized unto Moses," proving it, and in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat that same spiritual meat. And what's that spiritual meat? The manna. And I just thought of something too, because I looked at this comment section and said, "Oh, they're going into 1 Corinthians 10 to say that's talking about Israel, but it's talking about the mixed multitude." How is it talking about the mixed? So he's saying, "Oh, I don't want y'all to be ignorant. Y'all are the mixed multitude that came out with Moses." That don't make no sense. And we see who ate the manna. That's the same spiritual meat. Who ate the manna? The Israelites. You see in Numbers 11, the mixed multitude fell a lusting and died, and you see the Israelites eating that spiritual meat. That's how you know this is talking about the Israelites. This isn't talking about the mixed multitude. That's a cut. And then and it's things like that, bro. Like you are not on no type of level to teach this book. It's ignorant statements like that. He's saying they're the mixed multitude is evident that you don't know what you're talking about. It's ridiculous, man. It's one of the things where you are just mentally insane, bro. But going back to Acts chapter 2, there's a reason why we see Israelites in other nations. Like it says, Acts 2 and 5 again, it says, "And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven." Why is it saying that? Because of the curses. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64. Deuteronomy 28, verse 64, it says, "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." And we did that. We did that when we went there. But we turned from that. We turned because let me get this. Let me set this up, and then we're gonna go back into that. I want to make that point together with this back in 1 Corinthians, since I'm just a liar. Right? I'm gonna read this again. I'm gonna jump to that. It says, "And Yahweh shall scatter thee among all the people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." So when you get separated into these other nations, all these other nations, it says among all people, all these other nations, you're going to be serving other gods as part of the curses. Now look at this. When we serve other gods, we become what? Gentiles. Look at this, 1 Corinthians 12, verse 2. "Ye know that you were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols," which are other gods, "even as you were led." That's how we became Gentiles. And when we start to believe in Christ, then we start turning back unto the Lord. That's the Gentiles is talking about in Acts chapter 15. Those who were carried away unto these dumb idols, the Israelites who were carried away unto these dumb idols, who started worshiping Zeus, who started worshiping freaking just all the Greek pantheon of gods, and the other gods who they worship in other nations. Now, when they start turning to God, what do? Is start believing in Christ. To let you know, putting all this together, to let you know those Gentiles have to be Israelites. If Christ died only for the Israelites, they have to be Israelites. And we also see instances where Israelites are called Gentiles, because in chapter 10 in 1 Corinthians, it said, it basically said literally, I wouldn't have a Jew. Let me read it again. Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea and were baptized unto Moses. He's letting them know in chapter 10 they were Israelites, the people he's talking to. Now, when you get to verse chapter 12, it says, you know that you were a Gentile. So you were a Gentile when you were carried away unto these other gods due to the curses, so that Christ could now die for you, so you can be reconciled back to the Father and start turning yourself back to God. That's who the Gentiles are in Acts chapter 15. And it's that simple. Like it's that simple, bro. Like these ain't things that's hard. Because even in Acts chapter 15, let's see, Acts 15, this is of them that turn. So it says, verse 15 and 19 is, wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles. Doesn't mean all the nations, specific people who were among the Gentiles have turned from God. Who is that? Who is that? That's the Israelites who didn't know that they were Israel and conformed themselves to the ways of the Gentiles. Just like how you see in Rome. Who was the head over Rome? The Caucasian Europeans. They was over that. But who was there? The church in Rome. Who was the church? The assembly of Israelites. And that's according to the Greek and context in Acts chapter 7. So when it says among the Gentiles, it doesn't mean like all the Gentiles. It means people scattered among the Gentiles. And you see a throwback to that in Tobit 13 and 3. This is Tobit 13 and 3. It says, confess him before the Gentiles, ye children of Israel, for he hath scattered us among them. He scattered the children of Israel among the Gentiles. So when you go to Acts 15, he's saying this. Let me get it again. It's wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them. Who's the them? Those which were scattered amongst the Gentiles, which have turned to God. Who is that? The Israelites who thought they were Gentiles, who thought they were Colossians, who thought they were Thessalonians, Ephesians. Like it's one of those things you gotta just look in context, bro. Like I'm not just sitting up here lying. I'm not just saying things because it works for my presupposition. I'm saying things because it works with what the scriptures say. If I believe what you believe in, the Bible is a contradiction factory. It's a factory of contradictions. A straight factory of contradictions, bro. And we know God isn't the author of confusion. And let's make another point. So I wanted to deal with that mixed multitude argument. I don't know if y'all watch Deacon, y'all probably know about this cut already. Let me see. Wisdom of Solomon. G. Watch this, right? Because they'll say, he even said, I saw a thing on his comments saying that we can't use 1 Corinthians 10 because it's talking about the mixed multitude. Now, in the mixed multitude, it was a little bit of the Egyptians scattered in with us. Now let's see what Wisdom of Solomon 16 says about that mixed multitude. It says, and so it was appropriate that these people were punished by such creatures, tormented by swarms of them. But you, O Lord, did not punish your people in this way, because there was two lots, one for the people of God and one for the Gentiles, these being Egyptians at this time. Instead, you showed them kindness. You sent them quails to eat, a rare, delicious food to satisfy their hunger. You did all this so that the idolaters, who were the idolaters among us? Those Egyptians, that mixed multitude, when they were hungry, would be unable to eat because of the disgusting creatures sent unto them. That's talking about Numbers chapter 11, where it talks about the mixed multitude fell a lusting. Well, they got put to death, fell a lusting, wanting for this food, but they couldn't eat it. And it says, and they ate, where was that? Unable to eat because of disgusting creatures sent to them. Your people, however, suffered hunger only a short while, and then they ate the finest food. And what was that? The manna, the same spiritual meat that we ate. We ate the manna and they fell a lusting. They got put to death. Watch this. Verse 4. It was necessary for the oppressors, even after they came out of Egypt with us, they're still called oppressors. It was necessary for the oppressors to suffer relentless need, while your people saw how their enemies were being tormented. So the Lord allowed them to come out with us so that they could be tormented. So how then is 1 Corinthians 10 talking about that? He's talking about the Israelites in context, and it don't make no sense because the Lord allowed them to fall to die in hunger, and he gave the Israelites food to eat. He used them to be tortured so that we can see that, to show that the Lord put a difference between his people and the Egyptians, just like how it says in Exodus. What was that? Exodus 11:7, I believe. Yeah, but against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against a man or beast, that ye may know that Yahweh doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And he did that not only then, but after, when the mixed multitude was brought up out of Egypt and they were tormented. Like, the Lord isn't dealing with these other nations. Not on the level he's doing for us. That's why it says in addition to Esther that all the great miracles and wonders that he did for Israel, he hasn't did for the other nations. He gives us manna. He gave them destruction. He gave them torture. Like bro, bro, like this is one of those things where it's like, wow. But I digress. That's how we know in Acts chapter 15 that's talking about non-Israelites. I mean, not non-Israelites, Israelites. And we know it's not talking about non-Israelites due to all the multitude of precepts we just went into. It's simple. We can keep going.
Who would have just read 2 verses up? Acts 15:17. It says,
brothers, listen to me. Simeon has related how God first visited the Gentiles to take from them a people for his name. And with this, the words of the prophets agree, just as it is written, just as it is written, just as it is written,
just as it is written.
After this, I will return and I will rebuild the tent of David that has fallen. I will rebuild its ruins and I will restore it, that the remnant of mankind may seek the Lord, and all the Gentiles who are called by my name.
my fellow Gentiles.
My fellow Gentiles, bro. Wow.
15 and 19 is specifically referring to Amos 9 and 12. Amos 9 and 12 is speaking of Edomites and heathens, not bloodline Israelites. Let's see for ourselves.
Now, he's going to go to, I think he just goes to Amos 9. Okay, right. He just goes to Amos 9. That's pretty much it for this video. But he goes here to say, is this talking about talking about bloodline Israelites? Let's see. Let's see. This honestly, this passage is the whole reason I even did this response video in the first place, because Acts 15 is starting to be the new Hebrew Israelite John through 16, man. And a lot of people are getting caught up by it and breaking it down wrong. Right now, when it says Simeon, this is Peter. Simeon have declared how God had first visited the Gentiles to take out of them a people for his name. And to this agree the words of the prophets, as it is written, after this, I will return and build again the tabernacle of David, which is fallen down, and I will build again the ruins thereof, and I will set it up. Now, when you see verse, I don't know why I keep burping that much. When you see Acts chapter 15, verse 14, all the way down to 16, this is talking about Israelites. And when I mean Israelites, I mean natural bloodline Israelites. Because when you see the tabernacle of David, that's in direct correlation to Israel being whole and complete. During the time of David, Israel was whole and complete. We wasn't split up into two separate nations. This is talking about the restoration of Israel. Because you see this in Amos chapter 9. It's really end-time eschatology when Israel is being restored. This isn't specifically happening right now, like it's in totality when we've fully been restored. But he's alluding to the Gentiles now being cleansed. And by Gentiles, I mean the Gentiles of our people being cleansed so that all Israel can be saved. So that all Israel can be restored into one whole nation again, like it was at the time of David. They're never going to go into what the tabernacle of David is, but they're just going to go ahead and we're just going to slide past that and just go to where it says the Gentiles. But to answer your question, verse 14 to 16 is talking about Israel, the restoration of Israel. Now, the issue is with verse 17. Verse 17 does not say what Amos says. And here we go. And I know when he does a response video, it does not say what Amos said. It does not say what Amos said. I already know it's coming. But what he's doing right here, what Peter does right here is he misapplies Amos chapter 9. Now, as far as verse 16, he uses it correctly, but as far as verse 17, he misapplies Amos chapter 9. And I know that's going to be a tough thing to hear. It's also a tough thing to say, but when you look at Amos chapter 9, you can't come to the conclusion that Amos 9 is saying the same thing Peter is saying. So let's go to Amos 9 and analyze it real quick. See right here. It says, and in that day will I raise up, I'm reading it again. Amos 9 verse 11. It says, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David. We already explained it. Because even the Christians know it's a restoration of Israel. And in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof. And what is that going to? Basically bringing all Israel so they can be saved again. And I will raise up its ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. Now, here's the point. Verse 12. That they, who's the they? The tabernacle of David. The tabernacle of David is Israel. That they may possess the remnant of Edom. Now, when you look at possessed right here, it can't be a good thing. It's Yerash in the Hebrew. Right? Yerash. It means to seize, dispossess, to take possession of, inherit, disinherit, occupy, impoverish, to be an heir. Now, in this context, it's not being heir. I don't know why. I don't know where you're getting that from. But what it is literally to take possession of, to impoverish, to come to poverty and be poor. That's what that means. To destroy, bring to ruin, disinherit, dispossess, impoverish. That means to make them to be nothing, to be servants and handmaids, like you see in Isaiah chapter 14. That's what this is talking about. That's what it means when it means possess, when it means to possess the what was it? Possess the Edomites. I don't know why I forgot that real quick. That was real fast. I just read it and just straight forgot it. But it says that they may possess the remnant of Edom. That means to seize them, to possess them, to impoverish them. How? Through the gospel, like you see in Isaiah 61, where they're going to be our Isaiah. What is it? Where they're going to be our plowmen and vine dressers, and we're going to be the children of God and the priest of God. That's what that's going into. That doesn't mean they're going to be part of the kingdom. That doesn't make no damn sense, because you can compare this. You can do comparative text with this with Numbers. Let me show you. Numbers 11, 4, and Obadiah. Oh, Numbers 12, 24 and 17. It says, I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. But not nigh. There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. That's talking about Christ, and shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Seth. That hasn't happened yet. We have not seen that. This is talking about Christ's return to the earth, to be that ruling king and destroyer. Now, if we know that's the context, when you see verse 18, and Edom shall be a possession, Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Not the Edomites, Israel shall do valiantly. So in Amos 9, during the restoration time of Israel, when we're all brought back into one nation, like you see in Ezekiel chapter 37, when you see in Ezekiel chapter 37, then we're going to possess Edom. For what? For servants and handmaids, like you see in Isaiah 14. Oh, I keep getting those confused. And it says, Isaiah 14:1, for Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob and will yet choose Israel and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them. There it is again, shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. That's how Edom is going to be possessed, for servants and handmaids. Not some of them, all of them. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were. And that's a key point. They shall take them captives, whose captives they were. Now look at this, right? Once we read right here in Amos 9 and 12, it says that they shall that they may possess the remnant of Edom. When we possess the remnant of Edom, when you skip down, it says, and I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel. What does that mean? That means to save them from captivity. That means we're going to be in captivity to who? Edom and all the heathen at this time. That's why it says in Isaiah 14, and they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. How are we going to do that? When Israel's restored, when the tabernacle of David is restored, Israel is fully restored as a nation, no more two nations. Let me get that real fast. I really don't have to, but I want to for the sake of argument. Ezekiel 37, verse. See, the reunion of Judah and Israel. That's the tabernacle of David being risen up. Ezekiel 37, verse 21. And say unto them, thus saith Yahweh God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, just like how the Gentiles who were the people who was among the Gentiles. That's who this is from. And honestly, the Israelites who were scattered into all the nations. But I will take Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel. And one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations. Neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore at all. That's what that's talking about. And at that time, we're going to possess Edom for handmaids and servants. This isn't talking about their salvation. That's why I say when in Acts chapter 15 that Peter misrepresented Amos chapter 9. And that's the only conclusion you can come to, because when you read Amos chapter 9, it doesn't say what he's saying. And you have to realize he's a man just like us. He has the right to give a bad breakdown. And it's not even really bad. He applied the first part he applied this part correctly because he was talking about the restoration of Israel. But as far as this part, nah. That's just what it is, man. The end all be all. That is what it is. Because Amos, the thing is, Amos is thus saith the Lord. Everything the prophets say is thus saith the Lord. So they're going to hold more weight over Peter, over Paul, and over everything. Whatever thus saith the Lord is, that's what it is. That's the gist of it. It is what it is. Now, when you read this, when you get down to where it says, as that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the heathen which are called by my name, saith Yahweh that doeth this. Now, when you read this, you have to pay attention to punctuation. We know there's no punctuation here in Hebrew, but in this case, you they added the punctuation so you can know what's going on, and so you can see what it's talking about. Now, when it says that they may possess the remnant of Edom, who is the they? The tabernacle of David. Who is that? Israel. And all the heathen, which are called, and all the heathen, who's going to possess them? The tabernacle of David, Israel. And it says, which are called by my name. Who's called by the Lord's name? Israel. Nowhere else in the Bible can you see another nation being called by Israel's name. And matter of fact, let's go to Isaiah 63. Let's see something real fast. If it means what he says it means, let's see. Where did I write that down at? 17. I need to hurry up. Yeah, this is Isaiah 63, verse 17. And it says, O Yahweh, why hast thou made us to err from thy ways and harden our heart from thy fear? Return for thy servant's sake, the tribes of thine inheritance, who is at Israel, the people of thy holiness, and have possessed it but a little while. Our adversaries, or our enemies, the other nations, have trodden down thy sanctuary. We are thine, the Israelites. Thou never bearest rule over them. The enemies, the Gentiles, the actual blood-born Gentiles, they were not called by thy name. Let me read it again. We are thine, thou, the Israelites. Thou never bearest rule over them. They were not called by thy name. The Gentiles, natural blood-born Gentiles, were never called by the Lord's name. Ever. Ever, bro. And if they were, I need you to show it. Because now we have a contradiction. If Amos 9 and Acts 15 means what you say it means, we now have another contradiction. Because Isaiah literally says it. They were never called they were never, ever, ever called by your name. Which makes sense because in 2 Ezra chapter 6, they've always been reputed as nothing. So that's how you know contextually, these are all talking about the tabernacle of David. That's who's possessing Edom and all the heathen. And that's who's called by the Lord's name. We see that in various parts of Scripture, especially in Isaiah, about Israel being called. Various points. Let me get this in Jeremiah. Is it 30? What did I get? Jeremiah 10. I'm running out of time. Let me just get the point in Psalms. 79, was that 79 verse 6? Okay. All right. This is Psalms chapter 79, verse 6. Pour out thy wrath upon the heathen. I thought they were going to be saved. Pour out thy wrath upon the heathen that have not known thee. Now, if Gentiles was called by the Lord's name, wouldn't they know him? Moving on. And upon the kingdoms that have not called upon thy name. That what? Have not called upon thy name. For they have devoured Jacob and laid waste his dwelling place. Oh, remember not against us former iniquities. Let thy tender mercies speedily prevent us, for we are brought very low. Help us, O God, our salvation, for the glory of thy name, and deliver us. Who is that? Israel. And purge away our sins for thy name's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, where's their God? They're saying, where's their God? Watch this. Let him be known among the heathen in our sight by the revenging of the blood of thy servants, which is shed. That's when they're going to know the Lord. When they get put to death, or when they get put into captivity and put to death. That's when they'll know the Lord. Because just like I said, I believe it's in Psalms. Is it Psalms or Proverbs? I think it's Psalms, where it talks about the Lord is known through his judgments. And this is a judgment that's going to happen upon the heathen who don't know his name and don't call upon him. Verse 11, let the siding of the prisoner come before thee, according to the greatness of thy power, preserve thou those that are appointed to die, and render unto our neighbors sevenfold into their bosom their reproach, wherewith they have reproached thee, O Yahweh. How they reproach the Lord? By reproaching us. So we, thy people, the Israelites, and sheep of thy pasture, will give thee thanks forever. We will show forth the praises to all generations. So what do we get from this? The heathen don't know the Lord. The Lord never called them. They don't call on his name. And when they finally know the Lord, they're going to know him through them being put to death. Captivity and then put to death. Let's go to Obadiah. You see, this Obadiah 17. This is, but upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance or salvation, and there shall be holiness, and the house of Jacob shall possess their possessions. Verse 18, and the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, and the house of Esau for stubble. So after they serve they're possessed right here, after they're possessed for servant and housemaids, when Christ finally gets done with them, they're going to be for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining of the house of Esau. There shall be any remaining of the house of Esau, for Yahweh have spoken it. So how can there be any salvation for them? How can the Lord call them by his name and then say later after that none of them are going to be alive after this? How do we deal with this? If what you're saying is true, how do we deal with Obadiah? How do we deal with Amos 9, the actual breakdown of it? How do we deal with any of that? How do we deal with Isaiah 63, man? All these precepts that cut that understanding of Edomites being saved. How do you, what are we doing? What are we doing, bro? Is it something that's just like this? It's just things like this just be making me mad because you know. There's no, oh, I'm just misinformed. Bro. You just want to save, like I said last live stream, you want to save Brody and Cooper and Casey. You want them all to be saved with you. And the thing is, they're all going to go into captivity. And to understand that Amos 9 is talking about Israel specifically, when you keep on going, it says, behold, the day is come, saith Yahweh, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes, him that soweth seed, and the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. That's talking about that whole paradigm shift about how Israel now is going to be the hegemony, and the other nations are going to be the bottom. And when is that going to happen? Verse 14, and I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel, that means save them, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. That's Isaiah 60 and Isaiah 61, where the gospel said. And they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them in their land, like I said in Ezekiel 37, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land, which I have given them, saith Yahweh thy power. Why? Because we'll be the hegemony and we'll have power over the nations. That's why Christ said, if you keep my works unto the end, you'll receive the power, you'll receive power over the nations. That's Revelations 2. Revelation 2, verse 26. And he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. That's They like to say we like to read the Bible with our presuppositions or our one West mind state. I'm real tired of hearing like anytime a Scoffer'S use one West, I'm just tired of hearing about we're still holding on to a lot of the old breakdowns the one West hold on to, like the original one West. Like there's been evolutions of breakdowns. Like you gotta really stop it. It's ultimately they come against one West because they know one West comes against Edomites. That's all it boils down to, man. You want to save your best friend Brody. Now, as long as that's established, I want to get this one last thing. Right. I gotta go to a second video with 100 of his subscribers. This right here. Because he said something.
Adultery. And so his point, he said this is the only thing that he
hearing.
Keep like the other nations.
For his point, he said,
gave me specific things. For his point, he said this is the only thing the heathens got to keep, like the other nations. For his point, he said this is the only thing the heathens got to keep, like the other nations.
For his point, he said this is the only thing the heathens got to keep, like the other nations.
Family.
Now, when I said that, I said literally this. I said that I asked him, do heathens have to keep the law? Well, I asked him, do we have to keep the law? And he went to Acts chapter 15, talking about the heathens have to keep Acts. Basically, let me get it. Yeah, verse 20. It says, but that we write unto them that they abstain from pollution of idols and from fornication and from things strangled and from blood. Now, I assumed his point was that that's all they have to keep, because that's all, from what he's saying, that's the only thing that can make sense. But he really said this, and I apologize for being wrong on this one.
These antichrist camps suffer from a disease called selective hearing.
That's rude.
I said Gentiles also have to keep the laws of Galatians 5.
And okay, now this is the thing, right? I'm sorry. I'll admit this on camera. I'm sorry for misrepresenting your point. But I thought in my head that you wouldn't say something as stupid to say that the Gentiles have to keep the laws of Galatians chapter 5. Because if that's the case, when you go to Galatians chapter 5, watch this. And I want to go to the video. I don't got the video on this computer. But he says right after that they have to keep Galatians chapter 5, but the law of Moses is out. Right? Now let's look at this. They have to keep. He's basically talking about the fruits of the Spirit. He says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, faith, etc. It goes on. Now, the thing is this. If they have to keep this, that means they can't do these things, because that's the fruit of the Spirit. And we see in verse verse 16, this I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these things are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that you would. But if you be led of the Spirit, if you have the fruits of the Spirit, if you be led under the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are manifest. The works of the flesh are manifest, right? So you can't be doing these specific things if you're walking in the Spirit. So they have to keep these. The first one is adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness. If the law of Moses is done away with, how do you define what these are? Because, matter of fact, he says it. Watch this.
Let's play the tape.
Also in Galatians 5, it kind of pans out where, no adultery, no evil act.
His point. He said this is the only thing the heathens got to keep, like the other nations.
Also in Galatians 5, it kind of pans out where, no adultery, no evil act.
His point. He said this is the only thing the heathens got to keep, like the other nations.
Said no with a lot of times, but this Moses' carnal law, that's out the window.
That's what I wanted to get. He said Moses' carnal law is out the window, right? So if Moses' carnal law is out the window and they have to keep the fruits of the spirit, they can't be keeping the fruits of the flesh. They can't be doing that. So that means they have to do opposite of that. So that means they can't commit adultery. If Moses' law is out of the question, how do we define what that is? How do we define what fornication is, which is unlawful sex acts that you see in Leviticus 20, adultery, Exodus 20, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, Exodus 20, witchcraft, hatred, Leviticus 19. All these things are found in the law of God. All these things are found in what they call the law of Moses. So how can the Mosaic law be out of there if it says you can't do these things? And if that's the case, how do you then define what adultery, fornication, uncleanness, and all the rest of these things are? Like, you see the problem with that? You see how confusing that is? You see how that don't make no goddamn sense? What are you talking about, bro? It's like, you should be happy I misrepresented you, to be honest, because if this is the case, I would have stayed right here. You're lucky I didn't hear this. You were absolutely lucky I didn't hear this, because it's specifically talking about things that are contained in the law of Moses. But you said the law of Moses. Let's hear it on tape again.
It kind of pans out where, no adultery, no evil acts, blah, blah, blah. But this Moses' carnal law, that's out the window.
Okay.
It's out the window. If it's out the window, what is this talking about, bro? Like, this is why I say I'm not gonna deal with morons like this no more. This is your last hurrah, bro. Your videos, all the videos you'll make after this, you'll be talking to yourself because nobody is watching you. You double talked and contradicted yourself. You said the laws of Moses are done away with. Here's Paul teaching you have to keep the laws of Moses in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. He's teaching that. I don't care how you try to slice it or try to run away from it. Paul's teaching that. You contradicted yourself. You got busted up in Romans 6 and Romans 7 and verse 8. You don't know what you're talking about, bro. All praises. You don't know what you're talking about. But I hope Israel was edified. I hope they learned to refrain from these men. If you want to follow this man, that's you. You can follow him into destruction. But all I'm gonna say is, that's you, bro. You got admonished after the second and third admonition. Reject this man. You're done. You're out of here, man. You're finished. You don't know the Bible, and I pray you repent. And with that, I want to say, call all Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai and say Shalom, man.